Hi, this is MK Lords with Bitcoin Not Bombs. I'm here with Mike Kimberl of Sean's Outpost. He's been helping the homeless after the massive flooding we had in Pensacola last week. Basically, a very unexpected storm hit and flooded a lot of the area, and it caused a lot of harm to a lot of people. There were a lot of flooded vehicles, and the homeless were perhaps affected the most by this. So Mike was on the ground immediately, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what he did to help the homeless and how badly they were affected. So how are you doing, Mike?
Pretty wore out, but I'm doing really good.
All right. So you've been literally busting your ass since last week, helping people. What were the hardest hit areas?
Um, a lot of the hardest hit areas tended to be along an area that we call the Bluffs, which is probably a more affluent area of Pensacola, which was beneficial to the homeless. But there were a few areas on the west side of town near some retention ponds that flooded out really bad, along with a segment of Satoshi Forest.
How much of Satoshi Forest was affected by this?
We had, I would say, three of the campsites got affected. One of the campsites, the people stayed away. They actually sought shelter before the storm came in. And then another gentleman rode out the entire storm in his tent. And given what some of the other people went through, I was amazed. And then there was a couple that ended up getting waist deep water in their tent, and they ended up calling us, and we got one of our volunteers out there to go and rescue them, and they ended up staying at his house that night.
Wow, so not only after the flooding were you trying to resume things as normal with just getting food to people, but you also acted as almost a rescue service for some of these displaced people.
Yes, that we did.
Did you come across anyone who was seriously injured and who was facing life-threatening conditions during the flooding?
No, luckily everyone seemed to come out of it really, really well. We had the two people that we had to go and pick up. They left their tent with their dog and tried to get their two cats out, but the two cats jumped off into the water. But they were found, so that even the cats were okay. And they ended up staying in the portalets until Adam arrived to pick them up and take them back to his place.
Wow. How badly were the other homeless outreach groups affected by the flooding?
Well, the Alfred Washburn Center, which is a local day center, got about waist deep water, and I don't know if everyone who is familiar, but a few months back, the Washburn Center also was a victim of arson. And right after the arson took place, Sean's Outpost came in, and we started doing hot meals there daily. And we had gotten down, as other groups had come in to start helping out, we had gotten down to about 3 days a week. And since the flooding, we're back to doing every day again there. And then right down the street from there is the Waterfront Mission, which holds about 200 beds, but I believe they were saying there was only about 100 people that were staying there at the time, and they had to evacuate all of them. They ended up getting about knee to chest deep water all through their facility as well, and they evacuated everyone to the Salvation Army.
So it's a very small team at Sean's Outpost. How many volunteers did you have helping out during this?
During the storm itself, I would say two. And then after the storm, we had about 8 to 10 people that were helping out, along with all the homeless. The homeless really stepped up and, through self-determination were, helping themselves and each other. It was really awesome to see.
So that's something I've noticed after a few of the hurricanes here too, is when something happens in Pensacola, you definitely can't always rely on the city or the county, or even in this case an agency like FEMA, to come in and help people immediately. And I have noticed a lot of just local help from people, just people helping each other, neighbors helping neighbors. And so that's a really awesome point about homeless people, trying to help other homeless people. It really speaks to, the humanity of everyone. Everyone's trying to help each other out. Everyone's going through this really difficult time. So I think that's really awesome. Of course, it's really unfortunate that so many people were affected, but that's great that that spirit of wanting to help each other out during this tragic time was still there.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And like you were saying, that we really can't depend on the federal government. I think it was today, as a matter of fact, that the president finally agreed to let FEMA get involved. So, we're still waiting on FEMA. So, and, I don't think that we were going to wait around. I know that the media locally here has been like, oh, finally, here comes FEMA. And we were like, we haven't stopped working, so,
I did find that really strange. There was even a couple tweets from the city of Pensacola and Ashton Hayward saying, "Great news, the president has declared this area a state of emergency." Well, it was a state of emergency last week when this was happening. It's still, some of the roads washed away, like on Scenic Highway and in some other areas, so traffic is still really bad. It's a little bit difficult to get around, but a lot of people, just through people helping each other, have kind of filled in that gap. It really does show that you can't depend on FEMA for this, and now all of a sudden FEMA can come in and, who knows, maybe take the glory or something, but yeah, it's a little bit late.
Yeah, but they can have the glory. I'm completely fine with that. As long as it doesn't get like it was after Ivan, Hurricane Ivan, we had National Guard troops with fully automatic weapons doing, directing traffic and stuff, and that was really scary. But we haven't seen anything like that, so that's a big plus. I don't like machine guns in my face, so.
It was a really scary scene because it got very militant very quickly, and they were even stopping, and they were stealing gas from people too, from people who were there to work on cell sites. They were actually saying, okay, we're going to take your gas, basically because they could, and they needed it for whatever operations, but literally taking it, down the barrel of a gun, which is pretty scary to think about. Also, during this, and was really strange too, the same day that there was this massive flooding, later in the evening, there was a gas leak, or a gas explosion from a gas leak at the county jail that ended up injuring about 100 people and actually killing 2 of the inmates. And you just happened to be there when that was happening, and even got video footage of that. Can you describe what you saw?
Yeah, well, basically what we had done was we had taken the thrift store that we recently opened and had turned it into a makeshift shelter. We had laid cots out and were letting people that had been displaced stay in our shelter. And we were sitting there, and I guess a little after 11 o'clock, we heard this loud boom, and honestly, we thought someone had drove their car into the side of the building. And we ran outside to, see what the damages were. Police cars started whizzing by, and it was obvious that it was a calling all cars kind of scenario. So, I jumped in my car and followed all the police cars to the county jail and got out and started videotaping to try and find out what had happened. And the thing that was really interesting about it was once we showed up, and people started pulling out video cameras and videotaping the scene, because there were inmates all out in the road, and being, I guess, covered by police officers with fully automatic weapons. We noticed that they started pulling out spotlights and turning the spotlights on the crowd, so we couldn't get really good video footage. And I just always, kind of find that odd when officers do that. I've had that happen a few times with spotlights on their cars when I'm doing like cop watch kind of stuff. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it was a really strange circumstance, and there was even reports that earlier in the day people were smelling gas, and they kept trying to tell some of the people who worked there, the guards and whatnot, and there were no reports filed. You could go back and see that there were no reports filed of the smell, but people clearly smelled it and were saying stuff about it. So it definitely doesn't bode well for the county, who's already under investigation by the Department of Justice for having really squalid jail conditions, among other things. To have this happen and to just kind of ignore this concern. It's obviously a serious concern. It resulted in the deaths of 2 people.
That's very true. The other thing that's really concerning about that, because they had to take control of the jail away from the sheriff, is at the same time all that's going on, the city of Pensacola has hired this Robert Marbut character who likes to build not jails to house homeless people in, and it's obvious that we can't even run the jail properly, so, why are we putting these people in charge of, building another facility? So we'll see how all that out.
Yeah, Dr. Marbut is an interesting character. He was an advisor for the first President Bush on some of these homeless issues, and he's built similar structures around the country. Probably the closest to here would be in Pinellas County, which is similar to Escambia County as far as size. It's in South Florida, and they literally built the homeless facility next to the county jail, and it's run by the county. And these are barely, they're not the most humane conditions from a lot of the pictures I've seen. And so the city of Pensacola has brought this guy in as an advisor. They're billing him as a homeless expert, and basically trying to sell people on the idea that we need to bring this guy in who's going to centralize everything and try to build this facility to force homeless people into. And in Pinellas County, it very much sounds like you're not given a lot of options. It's jail or this facility where you're going to be drug tested and you're going to be forced to work 40 hours a week and be thrown in something called a penalty box if you test positive for alcohol or whatever drugs, which is what were the dimensions again? It was like these yoga mats in this very small area that's kind of open to the elements. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've still not been able to find like really good pictures of his penalty box, but I have seen footage of him joking about how you'd be surprised at how quick people will comply once they are exposed to elements, and that just put a chill down my spine hearing someone say something like that. Photos that I've seen inside the facility are almost like maybe a 10 by 20 square with like 7 yoga mats on the ground that have partition walls, so it's not even like you're in a room. It's just a little section cordoned off in the side of a room that almost looks like a warehouse and has tables for dining in the center of the room. It's really almost surreal looking to me. I can't believe that it's something that we've even considered in this country.
I mean, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but these things sound similar to work camps. I mean, the homeless people, they're using a lot of strange terminology, like, oh, the homeless people are going to voluntarily enter and voluntarily work, but like I said, from what I've seen in Pinellas County, that doesn't seem like it's a completely voluntary situation. And especially now after this disaster, I'm not seeing how the city can justify spending this consultant is spending thousands of dollars on this consultant to come in and who's basically going to say, oh, well, we need to build a new facility for homeless people. Now we definitely don't have the money to be able to afford that. So I'm wondering how this is going to kind of work out in the future. We're already pretty economically depressed in this area.
Oh, I know that they've even said that we're on the verge of bankruptcy in the city, and the county's not that much better. They did just get a big BP settlement, and all the local politicians are fighting amongst each other over who's getting BP money. And I'm sure they'll find a way to appropriate some of that into building some new facilities to house people in. And we'll just, if this does get built, which I'm really hoping it doesn't, we'll probably become a refugee camp trying to help keep people out of a facility like this. So I have friends down in Pinellas County that when you talk to them, it sounds very similar to what they're doing. It's almost like an underground homeless railroad of trying to hide people. And I just read an article about San Antonio, which is where he's from, in the first facility that Dr. Marbut built, where people were living in the sewers to avoid being caught and taken to his facilities. So it is very problematic, and people do try to stay as far away from getting locked up in those facilities as possible.
It's a very strange setup. They use social workers combined with police forces to go out and basically round up homeless people and take them to these camps. It's very strange, and it's being sold as a very good thing. I mean, the guy was a master at Hegelian dialectic. He was a very smooth talker. He made these things sound really great. But like you said, there are people in these other counties who are seeing firsthand the consequences of this. But at the same time, that speaks to the strength of decentralization, where you have these other outreach groups who are helping people get out of this situation, even if it is mandatory by the law or whatever ordinances they've passed.
Yeah, well, and we actually, in this flood that we just had, saw a really good argument for decentralization, because we only had 2 shelters open up to help people that had been displaced, because in the flooding, the Red Cross got flooded as well. So all of these different churches and whatnot that normally open up as shelters sat around waiting for a phone call from the Red Cross, and since the Red Cross had gotten flooded and lost all their contacts, they were unable to make that phone call, so the shelters never opened up. And there were 2 shelters or 2 churches that ended up opening up as a shelter because they took initiative to be like, we see that there's a need, and so they went ahead and opened up. And Sean's Outpost did the same with our thrift store. I wish we had been more prepared and were able to house more people than we did, but we did what we could with what we had.
It was definitely an unexpected event. I heard about storming in Mississippi from some of my friends there the night before it hit, and it seemed really serious, but I didn't really connect that it was coming this way, so it was very unexpected. And given that it was so unexpected, it was great to see people coming together, and even seeing churches getting involved, because there are a lot of churches in the area here. Not all of them are super focused on homeless outreach, though. So it was great. That's awesome that they came out. So what can people do to help Sean's Outpost? How can they get involved if they want to volunteer, or if they want to donate something?
Well, locally, we have the thrift store at 4406 North Halifax that is accepting donations Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6, and we will take anything in there from food, sleeping bags, tents, tarps, and clothing, anything that you think can help, anything that you would lose, which is pretty much everything. And then we're always taking on volunteers, and you can find out information on volunteering there. Usually when we find out what your schedule is, we can then tell you what's available in those scheduled times. And then for people out of town, we're always accepting, cryptocurrency donations. And
That's great. So yeah, definitely visit seansoutpost.com if you want to donate. They take all types of cryptocurrencies too, so you can definitely help from afar. Do you have any plans for Satoshi Forest in the future? I know that there's still some legal issues that are happening, and you have to get through those. Any new news on that, on how that's progressing?
well, I think we're on hold with that right now because of the disaster area. Our attorney had written a letter wanting some clarification on a few things, and we got a response that they were not going to respond while there was a disaster. So I think they've put everything on hold, but right before the flood, the county board of county commissioners did order the county attorney to file an appeal on the magistrate hearing that we had just won or had, dismissed, and then they still have the lawsuit that they have filed against Sean's Outpost. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that they end up at least dropping the lawsuit. And our attorney had said that it was like they were trying to take two bites out of the same apple with that one. But since they filed an appeal, hopefully we just have to deal with the appeal. But that'll be going into a circuit court now.
Okay, and I'll keep people updated on the progress of that. I know you're really tired, Mike, so I'm going to let you go. You've really been putting over 100% and 120% into this, and I really appreciate what you're doing. If you're in the DC area in June, June 20th through the 22nd, we'll be having a Bitcoin conference called Bitcoin in the Beltway, and 10% of the proceeds go to support Sean's Outpost. I'll be speaking there as well. Hopefully Mike can make it there. So definitely check that out. If you want to support us and even meet us in person at a conference, come check it out. And I guess we will be talking to you soon. Thanks so much again for joining me, Mike.
Oh, thank you, and thank you to everyone that has been supporting us through all of this.
All right. Excellent. Well, see you next time.
All right. Good night.